Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's very important discussion around our book club. We are reading Your Blues Ain't Like Mine by Bebe Campbell. I'm telling you, this is one of the most well-written novels with the most incredibly complex and interesting characters, really, that I've ever read. And I'm so excited to jump into this conversation. There's so many of you who are so interested in this book, and I promise you, this will not be a disappointment. And so, for those of you who don't know, my name is Kennedy Cobbin Richardson, and I am a partner at Kengen LLC. And we are a consulting firm specializing in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We bring an innovative and holistic approach to developing people, teams, and culture for purpose-driven organizations. And we are laser focused on actual behavioral change, building on a groundswell of DEI champions that are influential at every level of the organization. Our customized training is really built around this framework that you see here on the screen, where we are evidence-based and data-driven, helping people to, one, acquire the essential skills to have courageous conversations. And that's what we're going to embark on today, is have a courageous conversation about issues that are in the book, but are certainly mirrored and reflect life, art, which includes movies, theater, film, television. They all help lift up the human experience and give us an opportunity to talk about it in very abstract terms or objective terms, so that we don't have to feel personally attacking a person or a situation, but we're able to look at a book and have the courageous conversation that's necessary. The second thing that Kengen really does is to help acknowledge accept history and context of injustice in America. Your Blues Ain't Like Mine really does highlight, over a 30-year span, the injustices in America and how we grapple with them and deal with them individually. And so it's a problem that we all must take responsibility for and decide to be a part of the solution rather than the problem. Thirdly, articulate the lived experiences of marginalized groups. There will be many people in the book that you may have a connection with, where you feel that it resonates with you. And I would encourage you, as we go through this book, that you would be expressive in your experience about how experience you see relates to something that you know or have heard about. And finally, act as an ally to accelerate DEI everywhere you live, work, and play. And that is the ultimate. We need to support each other, be allies for each other, be upstanders instead of bystanders in all the places that are important to the friends and colleagues that you work with. The goal is for us to stand up for each other and really create a different kind of society moving forward. It is the way that is going to be most powerful for all of us. And I encourage all of us to really get involved. So a little bit about me. I am a DEI consultant for multinational corporations and nonprofits. I've worked within several domains: youth development, workforce development, healthcare, and financial services. I've been an executive director for 2 youth-serving nonprofits and marketing professional for both AmeriFirst Financial and Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. And my passion really is helping people embrace both themselves and society on their journey to allyship. What is an ally? It's a person of one social identity group who provides actionable support to members of another group, typically a member of the dominant group forming an alliance with marginalized individuals or groups that are being discriminated against. And what you'll find in the book is that there are opportunities for people to be allies for each other. And when they aren't being allies for each other, bad things happen. Consequences are real and sometimes life-threatening or life-taking. And so I'd like you to really take seriously your role as an ally. And it's not just white and black, but men to women, or cisgender to non-binary, whatever it is, you have an opportunity, you have at some point more privilege than another. And it is your responsibility really to try to be an ally to those who have less of a voice than you. And so I'd like to introduce a very good friend of mine, Cheryl Franklin. We are from the same hometown, go Youngstown, Ohio. I know it doesn't have the marquee value of Chicago, New York, but Youngstown is where it's at. And we recently reconnected, and I'm so glad to be connected with Cheryl Franklin once again. And we're going to go through this book together. And so, without further ado, Cheryl.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction. As she said, my name is Cheryl Franklin, and I am from Youngstown, Ohio. Very proud person from Youngstown, Ohio. I'm a United States Navy veteran. I am a law of attraction life coach and a chemical engineer. My experience ranges across several different industries: oil and gas, water, currently medical devices. And I have really been instrumental in developing a lot of activities and conversations that's promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of that comes from some of my personal experiences and just things that you see um, in life. We have to realize that, diversity is multifaceted, and sometimes we just think white, black, male, female, but there's lots of different facets of diversity. And it's very important to educate and to have these one-on-one discussions and group discussions that we're going to dive into with this book. My passion is contributing to equality and peace by helping people come to the realization that they can be their authentic selves while creating the life that they desire. When you can truly be you, unapologetically, then there's nothing that you can't create. So with that, we want to begin our book club. So first, we're going to talk about the ground rules. The first thing we want to say is that get comfortable being uncomfortable. A lot of these topics, they don't sit well with all of us, and we need to be comfortable with that, and be able to, listen and participate with enthusiasm, even though the topic may not be comfortable. Stay mentally and physically present so that you can get the best out of the discussions. Listen with an open mind and share authentically. Please note, these sessions are being recorded, but we don't want that to discourage you to participate and to make sure that, all of us can gain from this conversation. So the meeting format. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to give a brief summary of chapters 1 through 5. This first meeting is going to cover the first half of the book. We will have another meeting in the future that's going to cover the last 25 chapters of the book. We're going to talk about the characters. We're going to pose a few questions. We're going to talk about the issues. As we do these things, I want you guys to take note on how this book relates to what you know about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Also, what you don't know. If something comes up and it's unfamiliar to you, take note of that and, pose the question after the session is over. Kennedy will be more than happy to provide you with a DE&I vocabulary. I am loving the vocabulary. And she can do that to help us out. What new perspectives did you discover, if any? And if you can prepare a question to submit for our next group discussion, that would be awesome as well. So let's talk.
So, Cheryl, I'd like to invite to the screen two friends, Kate and Trista, who have read the book and are going to be a part of the discussion. Those of you who are viewing us live, you may put your comments into or answers into the chat. We will see them and put them also publicly. And if you'd like to join the conversation live on camera, we're also able to do that. You just have to kind of put that in the chat and let us know as well. But let's welcome Kate and Trista.
Hi. Welcome. Thank you guys for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
So as you guys can see, there are a few images on the screen. So we're going to talk. Now, I didn't put any names next to any of the faces. But Kennedy and I, we decided to have a little fun with this. And we thought that if we were going to have a movie based on this book, who would we cast? And why? So, we dug into some images, and we feel that these images relate to some of the characters in the book. So I'm going to turn it over to Kennedy and let her give you a brief description of the first 25 chapters of the book, and then we'll dive into the characters.
So as we have the conversation, I think that we'll probably get a good summary. But since you have this up, Cheryl, I'd like to ask Kate and Trista, which picture do you believe is which character? Do you have any idea who we might be casting in these roles?
Well, Emmett Till is Armstrong. I mean,
definitely.
Yeah. And so with that, Armstrong Todd, as a part of that summary that Cheryl is talking about, was inspired by Emmett Till and basically their story. Emmett Till, for those of you who don't know, was a young man visiting the South, and he was murdered by, supposedly whistling at a woman in the store. It turns out that she was lying, and right now they are trying to open the case again to get some convictions out of that. But this was also the catalyst for the civil rights movement. And we have some other implications that we're talking about as far as showing the world Emmett's mangled body and what that did to America and what the response was as a result of that. But because this book was inspired by the Emmett Till murder, we decided not to cast that character and to actually use the real likeness of Emmett Till. Other guesses?
Well, Matt Dillon is going to be Floyd, I guess.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if Floyd, so when I read the book, I don't know if Floyd was that cute.
Well, he was at one time, right? They were like
That's
the
true.
high school it couple.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And that's exactly what Cheryl said. And so I thought, okay, we can go with it. But this is his film, The Outsiders, when I think it's a 1983 or so film. And so a bad boy as well, poor as well. So from a class perspective, I felt it really spoke to the character. Can either of you give a short, or anybody, a short description of Floyd and sort of his little evolution throughout the first 25 chapters? What you remember?
Well, I mean, Floyd grew up in an abusive household, right? He had a tough upbringing with his dad, who was abusive and really difficult to please. And so that sort of explains a lot of his character going forward and why he is the way he is. I don't remember at what point we get to exactly at the 25th chapter, but I think they've gone through the trial and everything, right?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Then I won't.
I'll be the gatekeeper as far as what's going on.
But yeah, and I think his dad maybe favored his brother, so there was that. And they were very like poor Southern, kind of struggling to be working class, even white people in a very specific time and place. And like they didn't know they were racist, I almost believe. Like, but it's such their worldview. That's just how things are to them. And it's just like in their DNA from birth almost. And he comes from that.
Exactly. We're going to dive deep in more of those issues. Go ahead, Cheryl.
One thing that stands out for me about Floyd is that he wanted to be a good person. He wanted to be, the Christian. He wanted to handle this situation, without violence. And so that, that shows me that, we don't always understand where people are coming from and why they do the things that they do. and we can still have some compassion and some, empathy for people, even if they do something that we 100% do not agree with, because sometimes they don't agree with it as well.
Right.
For sure. It was like the structural racism that they couldn't even see was so thick and pervasive that in another world, he maybe wouldn't have acted how he did, but it was like, it's expected. And now so he does it. He follows through.
Mm-hmm.
It's really painful and tragic.
Yes.
I think that's what makes this book so interesting, is that there's no character that's cut and dried. Everybody has nuance, and there is good in everyone, and everyone does bad things as well. So it's not, it's your heart breaks for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This book is so well written. She allows every character to be human.
Yeah.
She does.
Like all are. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
She has characters I wanted to hate, but there was like a humanity to them, so I couldn't just strictly hate them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She allows every character to be human. And when you're done reading it, like you said, the ones that you want to hate, you're like, oh, my heart breaks for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a well-written book.
Right.
Any other characters we wanted to find?
Yeah, next picture.
Well, I mean, Floyd, like you're saying, they were the beautiful couple. So I think Anne Margaret, is that Anne Margaret? Must be Lily, right? Young Lily.
Yep, I definitely see her. Well, go ahead and talk about Lily, Kate.
Well, so she was like the local beauty and like the son of the wealthy family, were they in love? It's been a little while since I read, but they had a romance that went, awry because she was not from the right side of the tracks. And then she ends up with Floyd, who's on her same side of the tracks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I think you're conflating too.
Or am I conflating? Okay, Trisha, because I wasn't quite sure. It's like it's been a little bit.
I think Dolly was the one who.
Oh, that was Dolly.
With
Dolly,
yeah.
That
was
right.
Floyd's
I did.
sister, right?
Never mind that.
But Lily and Floyd were like the it couple, I think, in high school, like the beauty and the jock kind of stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
And she dropped out of high school to marry him.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's like that one, I think there's one part of the book where she runs into her English teacher and she's like, are you practicing your reading? And she's like, no.
That's
so
right.
she's that, wanting to be taken care of, wanting to be what was kind of ideal in the 1950s in the South, right? For women to marry and have children and be a housewife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is partially why she was so frustrating to me, because she had opportunities to have a different life.
Yes.
But it's hard to get out of your situation, but there were opportunities throughout her life that she could have changed her circumstances, and she chose not to.
Yes, we haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
The first 25.
Okay, all right. She was the most frustrating character.
But yes,
right.
For all of you who haven't read the entire book, we're giving you little nuggets to make you dig in.
Exactly. Okay, another picture.
I mean,
it's Taraji Clayton's girlfriend. I can't remember her name now.
Yes. Is her name Marguerite? Wait.
Yes, no. Marguerite. That's it.
No,
but that's not who.
It definitely could be.
It could have been
Delotha.
Yeah, that's what I really thought, but it could have been Marguerite Orton, honestly.
I think because you picked that picture, I thought it was Marguerite, because she's kind of looking pretty sexy there. So, and I don't really remember Delotha being that.
I would agree. So let's talk about both of them. So talk about Marguerite.
Marguerite, she has a relationship Clayton. The problem is I don't know where in the book all of this happened.
Yeah.
Like it's all kind of jumbled. So she's been introduced.
Marguerite was introduced in chapter 9. So before we get into Marguerite, I want to address the people who listen to the audiobook. The audiobook, unfortunately, is very different than the book. It does not cover Clayton at all.
Oh.
And I think it's unfortunate.
Wow.
I think it's something that we should definitely talk about. Why in 2022 we're listening to an audiobook that takes out one of the characters that has such a major impact on the story. So chapters, I think it's 3, 9, and 12 so far, do not talk about those are the chapters that talk about Clayton and Marguerite, and they're completely left out of the audiobook. So,
wow.
Yes, Marguerite has been introduced in the book, but for some of the people who listen to the audiobook, you may not, know who Marguerite is or understand her role. So just go along with us and, we'll enlighten you.
So go ahead and talk about Marguerite.
I don't even know where to begin if nobody knows about Clayton, but I guess so. She is the mistress of the son of the town kind of founder, almost like someone who's very politically active and high up in the town. And so that guy's son has Marguerite as his mistress. He's bought her a house, furnished it. It takes care of her, basically. But she kind of goes through a transformation. Where are we in the book? where she learns to read from Clayton, and then goes on to become independent because of that.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So that's good. And so since we're talking about Clayton, do you know which one we might have cast for Clayton?
Oh, is he on here?
I don't know who that is.
So it's Ed Westwick from Gossip Girl.
Oh, okay.
Did you guys watch Gossip Girl at all?
Yes.
Okay.
In a little while, but yes, now that you said that.
But he was Chuck, the mean one. And not that Clayton was mean, but just the son, the richness, the upper class kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess I'm dating myself if Matt Dillon is my reference.
All of us.
Actually, all of us right here. Okay, there's 2 other pictures left. What do you guys think?
Well, is Lisa Bonet, Ida?
That's Zoe Kravitz.
Oh, sorry, it's Zoe. See, like your mom. Okay, I'm dating myself. Zoe looks just like her mom. Yeah.
Just like her.
Yeah, just like her.
Is she Ida?
Yes.
Okay, I got 1 half right.
And then I don't know the animated character.
I don't either.
Okay. Would you like to explain, Kennedy?
Yeah. I'm guessing it's Jake, but
yes, it is Jake from Boondocks. This is the Uncle Ruckus character from the show Boondocks, which is about 10 to 15 years ago. I feel like about that. But you'd have to watch it as well. But it's about Uncle Ruckus. Really loved white people and did not like Black people at all. And that was sort of the difficulty and complexity of this particular character, even in Boondocks. And so for me, Black Jake, ugly as a snake, really, and we're going to ask this question later, but, just how he was on, Floyd's side, basically, against Armstrong Todd. And, that would be an Uncle Ruckus move for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that we've got a view, Cheryl, of, some insights through the book. So maybe we want to get to your question.
Yes, let's go to the next slide. So up for discussion. So I put fiction versus reality underneath up for discussion, just because I want to make sure that we're thinking about real life situations when we're having these discussions about the characters. So you don't really have to, answer these questions from a fiction versus reality standpoint. I just put that there to prompt thought. So our first question is, who do you feel is responsible for the murder of Armstrong Todd? Please explain.
So I'm going to say most responsible for my answer. And for me, it's Lily. I think that while Floyd's family was very instrumental in getting him to actually act, I also feel that in that moment when he was wondering whether or not she was looking or talking, or laughing with Armstrong, that she could have played it down, knowing that his reputation and his ego were at risk. And just to bring that down a bit and make it a nothing moment. But because she allowed it to happen, I just really believe that it was a domino effect. She allowed it, and the whole host of other issues happened as a result.
Okay. Any other opinions?
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. While I do think that she was culpable, I think a lot of people were culpable, and I don't think that she had the power in a lot of ways to actually affect change in this situation. Part of it is being a woman and not being listened to. I don't think people took her seriously, really. So when I saw this question, I thought, I don't know if there's any one person that is the most responsible, because it was really a group effort. There were so many points that people could have de-escalated the situation, and they didn't. I mean, from Clayton to Ida, even, who could have could have at least intercepted or done something to change the outcome. And then, of course, Floyd's family too. But I see where you're coming from with Lily. I absolutely, there were a lot of issues with her character, and she could have certainly tried harder than she did. But I don't know if it would have changed the outcome.
So who do you think did have the most power to change the outcome?
I feel like it was Clayton, actually, that he knew or had an inkling that it was going to happen, and could have intervened because of his status, and they would have backed down.
That's a great point. For me, I think it was Jake. I think it all started with Jake. Wow. And the fact that, he felt that Armstrong was this light-skinned Black guy from the North, and who does he think he is, coming down here with his French and, blah, blah, blah. And so he directly gave Floyd his name. Floyd was not present when this took place. And he would not have known if Jake hadn't said, he was talking French to your wife, And that, to me, was the one thing that could have, none of it would have ever happened. So I think the most instrumental person was Jake and his own self-hatred that led to this young boy's death. But Kennedy got me thinking about Lily. And there's a little section in the book in chapter 10, page 64, where she says she looked through the kitchen window at her husband, and he seemed taller and stronger. a man who would take care of her and protect her. Lily thought, I got a man who'll kill for me. That, it made him like, oh, what some women will do to be seen or heard. And she was a little extra, coming into the store and leaving. She was told to stay in the car, but just to be seen and to be heard and to be validated. And then to feel proud. Now her husband looks taller. He looks stronger because he killed a teenager. Mm-hmm. So I think, but, like you said, Kate, there's, many people were responsible. But Jake is it for me.
Well, I agree that they certainly all had a hand in it, and including I agree with you on Jake because the whole town turned on Jake after that, and so I believe if the town had a vote, they might vote for Jake too. Kate, what do you think?
I mean, it's Floyd, his brother, and his father who commit this beyond heinous act, right? So it's them. Everybody's read, right? Like, so they know what happened. The murder itself, it's them. But there's so many people who have either like who we've talked about, who have more than negligence. Like Lily, I think she wanted to feel power and she was clumsy with it. And she got sort of almost drunk on her very limited bit of power, so that she's not focused on she's caused him to lose his life. She's focused on, oh, I have a man who elevates my status, so there's so much culpability sort of spread around the edges too. There's part of me, I think my favorite character might have been Delotha. And maybe as a mother, I think of her blaming herself. Like, why did I bring him from Chicago and I'm working and he's alone and he doesn't understand the difference, the way it's so different here. So I don't want to call it blame because I know she was doing the best she could, but I feel like she probably felt some blame. It's just there's so much to spread around.
Right. Because as a mom, your kid, right? And if you've raised your kid in a northern state and she's from there, so if your kid will fit in or not. And and sometimes telling a kid to be quiet and not say anything is not enough. I mean, if anything, that makes them want to say something. And so, yeah, I can see Delotha blaming herself. I can see other people blaming her as well.
Yeah.
Because, we raise our kids now. That was a different time, in the 50s where it's a village. And you could easily send your kid to your relatives and, to advance yourself. But, I can definitely see blaming yourself for that and other people blaming her as well.
Yeah. Part of the tragedy of the story. She so resonated for me because, and you can see then how that plays out in her actions afterwards too.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because for chapters 1 through 25, I think to make it easier, we're still in 1950.
Okay, that helps.
So we're still in 1950, and this book covers, several decades. But for chapters 1 through 25, we're still 1950. So let's go to the next question. What role does the media and its ability to bring national attention to these events play in bringing justice to these crimes? Also, elaborate on the advantages and disadvantages of controlling the narrative, images in relation to current events. So for this question, I kind of wanted to touch on a lot here because now, back then there, when we talk about Emmett Till, there was no social media, there was no internet, but a few newspapers got a hold of it and it went nationwide and everyone knew about it just from these newspapers. So the media played, a role in letting the nation know what was going on in the South. Now you know what's going on all over the world, and that's not, but in relation to today, in current events, for instance, the George Floyd case, how instrumental was that in making sure that there were convictions? Because there have been other murders where no one was convicted. So what are your thoughts on the media and its ability to bring national attention?
There's a lot to unpack here, as they say.
Absolutely.
I mean, partly it makes me think now, right, the media, it's so different because now you have so many outlets and people tend to gravitate to like echo chambers. Is like, I agree with this, so I want to go listen here because this is what I already believe, and then it feeds on itself. Versus at the time of the story, like you said, everyone listened to the same, 10 voices, same media outlets. And so there was more unity, I guess, in the message that people received, which makes things simpler if it broke through. Like if a story broke through, then everybody heard it and heard it in the same way.
Right.
It's very different now.
I feel like the media in the past and during that time and up until social media, though, controlled the narrative and made, associated Black people with negativity. Like it was always, if there was a crime being committed, it was a Black person. And so the media really did a disservice to the Black community for a long time. And it's only now that people are able to film things for themselves, and it's less biased, that we're starting to reckon with this, that all of this stuff is happening. We didn't hear about it before because the media was not covering this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So I have a quick question to what you just said, Trista. We like to say the media, but we've all heard stories of reporters that whose stories can't get published. And so is there really this media, or is it these owners and these conglomerates, these businessmen who control the narrative?
Mm-hmm.
Because
it's the national media. It's who you're seeing on your television, and that's, you're right, that's being controlled by larger corporations.
Right. And what they want out, and what, so who really controls the narrative? And to agree with you, now that we have cell phones and we're able to record an unbiased truth, this is exactly what happened, without any narrative, just the video or just an image. We're able to make a decision based off of what we see with our own eyes. The interesting thing with Emmett Till, Kennedy and I were discussing earlier, is how his mom, she had to agree to let those pictures be released.
Yeah, and more than agree, she decided that she wanted the world to see what hate can do. And it was particularly inspirational for Rosa Parks, who said, if he went through that, I certainly, can stand up for my rights and decide where I'm going to sit. And literally that launched an entire movement. But I went to the Smithsonian Museum. If anyone else has been, there is that exhibit there, and the coffin, and they have her grieving and crying on audio. And just as being a mom, it was just gripping for her to deal with her son being mutilated and murdered in such a way. But it was her decision to put that out. And similarly with gun control laws, talking about assault rifles, they are wanting people to see what that does, particularly in school shootings, to a little body. Like, the kids are unrecognizable. And many of the parents, certainly and understandably, don't want to have their child's image mangled like that on film, and as we know now, without the newspapers can get at least thrown away, but that image will be on the internet forever. And so I understand why they don't want to, but they're wondering whether or not that would get people to really understand why gun control is important. And they use Emmett Till as an example specifically for how it launched a movement and changed laws and changed some things. And so, can this be used to, does the media, help in a positive way, but also help really embarrass someone or extend the grieving period because these photos just simply won't go away?
Well, it touches on what Trista raised, which is like, it's no longer a one-way message from the media. You have whoever you're communicating with can come right back with a video with, comments. And so it's sort of like, it's so much more unruly. I guess I worry also about in that once that's out there, like control is lost. And so because you have that, there are these like corners of the web and so on who could fetishize those images and use them in like really awful ways. So I understand also that wasn't so much a concern back when the story took place. And yet the power of the images of Emmett Till are just undeniable, right? They
Right.
launched such a movement.
And just imagine had there been someone recording a video like, oh no, he never said that to her. Here it is. Here's the video.
Right.
Or, just we have a lot of power now. But yet and still people still see what they want to see and interpret it the way they want to interpret it, regardless of what's right there in your face. They can make up their own narrative.
Well, that's good, because it was his word against the other. And then especially in the 50s and maybe even today, the Black person does not have that respect or power to say I'm right, so you're automatically accused. And so it wasn't until Rodney King, for me, that it was the first time we witnessed the real what happened. But that story would have been told very differently had there not been a cell phone video.
Right.
And that was that the 90s?
Mm-hmm.
So even
it may not have been told at all. And that's the unfortunate thing. I mean, things happen every day that we never hear about.
Yeah.
Because maybe the phone was taken, because we saw that, with the George Floyd thing, they were trying to confiscate people's cell phones. I mean, to control that narrative. And so it was just too many people. So, I mean, that made it really, dumb on their part as far as protecting themselves for these crimes they committed. But I mean, a lot of times, even though you're recording, it may not see the light of day.
Yeah. But I think maybe it helps. Like for me, I'm always aware of statements now when there's like a release statement, they thought this person had a weapon, so they shot. The person that didn't have a weapon. It makes me much more suspicious, I want to say. Like, I don't just read the line and go, oh, this thing happened. I'm like, really? Because we've seen enough of the reality of what really happened versus the released statement.
Absolutely.
Enough, but we've seen some. Yeah.
And I think that's why it was important for me to put fiction versus reality. Because I'm glad you said that we've seen enough.
Yeah.
As honestly, because we have, and we need to act. And that's why I love Kengen's allyship. that they push allyship, because we need allies. We need people to be intolerant and not to just witness and say, oh, that's terrible, but keep moving because it doesn't really affect me. We need allyship. We need someone to say, we've seen enough, and to really stand by that. So thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you.
Krista, what do you think? Going to weigh in?
What was that?
Did you want to weigh in on that?
Oh, me. No, I was just thinking there's a group out of San Francisco, and I can't remember the name, but it's an Asian American group, and they do these workshops on how to be an ally, and they're really powerful because they give people the tools in order to become a good ally. So if you see someone on the subway who's getting harassed, how to intervene to help that person without putting anybody in danger, that sort of thing. So I think, what's that? Bystander
intervention training, AAJC.
But yes, that's it. So you know it, yeah. And I think those kinds of tools are really helpful for people because we're seeing more now of the injustices, but don't know what to do about it. And so having tangible tools that you can use in the real world, I think is empowering and really helpful for people.
Right.
Shall we move to number 3?
So let's go to our final question. What are the similarities between Floyd Cox and Clayton? How do you pronounce Clayton's last name?
I've been saying
Pinochet. In relation to the pressure to emulate the beliefs and behaviors of their fathers.
And so I think that for me, the crux of this question is around hatred being taught and passed down. Clearly, both of them struggled with it. I think that Clayton was most confused based on his relationship with his nanny and Marguerite, which would not have been really tolerated, it seemed, by his dad, but we find out later that might have been also a front. But I think that it really gets to our ability to keep to not break rank, to continue to do what the family says is right or wrong, even if you have been conditioned to believe otherwise, at the very least.
I think that, when you talk about behaviors being taught, I don't think that I don't know if it was actually an effective teaching. Did they really learn that behavior, or did they just mimic it? Because I don't believe they really felt the way that their fathers felt. I felt there was a pressure to mimic it, what they thought, their fathers felt, or, their fathers' actions or whatever. But I don't believe that they were being their authentic selves. I don't believe that either Clayton or Floyd believed that their actions were reflective of who they really were.
Yeah, I think they were both reluctant to act in their father's image, but yet they tried to because they were they were trying to please their dads, even if they didn't realize it. I mean, Clayton kept pushing back on his dad, but he still had to appease him, or he felt like he had to appease him. So there is that push-pull of who they would have been had they not had that pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is so interesting. I thank you for raising this, because I didn't really see the parallel between these two. We didn't discuss it that I recall when we read it. These two characters, and you're really making me think about it in a way. Like Clayton, I felt like was consciously new. He didn't really believe. He didn't have share his father's belief system, and he took some acts that were safe, but yet let him keep his cushy lifestyle to push back. And Floyd, I don't think maybe was so conscious. He just was like a little hesitant, a little reluctant. And I'm just thinking now, like how it makes me feel almost more frustrated with Clayton, because it's like, well, you're making a choice. Floyd wasn't quite conscious of it. He just didn't quite want to go along. Versus Clayton, who's like, I'm going to choose my nice lifestyle over meaningful action.
Right. So since you bring that up, the difference in class, what do you think, how do you think their class structure played a role in that? You have enough money where you feel you're holding Clayton more responsible. And is that because of his class? Or, is you're looking like he doesn't want to lose the money, or he doesn't want to, but I think that's an issue too, as far as,
Such a good point, Cheryl. And because underlying this whole thing was like, the only phrase I have for it is structural racism, which feels a little clinical. It's not right. It's bigger than that, but it's like the air everybody's breathing and they don't realize it. And maybe it's Clayton, because you're of the upper class, you're the one with power to change it. Like you hold the levers of power, not Floyd. So when you make that choice, you're hammering in the structural racism. You're not trying to pull it apart at all.
Right. So we do hold people more accountable based off of their class, but does that make them less accountable?
I have my head spin around and think about that.
Does that make who less accountable?
Does it make Floyd less accountable because he is of a lower class?
Right.
He's still accountable for his actions. He's an adult.
Yes.
I think I keep going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that that Floyd's basic needs are not being met. He can't get it, like he can't work, like he's having trouble surviving, and so those needs need to be met before he can make bigger change. You know what I mean? So like Clayton is in a position where he doesn't have to worry as much about his basic needs, shelter, food, but he's worried about losing those, which is why.
Isn't that subjective? I mean, if you were Floyd, if you were Clayton and you've had a certain lifestyle, can you really imagine living anything other than that lifestyle?
Right. Which is why he doesn't, it's hard for him to.
That is his basic. He is protecting what he sees as his basic need from his class status.
But I think that's probably why we feel like we hold Clayton more accountable, because we see that his life could be worse. Like,
you're like, you could have it worse.
Yeah.
I do as well. Floyd doesn't have the space to think of these higher issues. As long as he still has to really, as she was saying, take care of his basic needs, you can't think of those higher things. It's just impossible to do so. And only because, I also work or have worked with people who were just trying to get a job and, did not have a place to live, really did wonder whether or not during the COVID pandemic, when I was working in Nevada, I had a line of more than 1,000 people 3 times a week just to get food. And I just mean that, then if I were to stop them in between, handing them the box of food to say, hey, and what do you think about the theory or philosophies of so-and-so? It's like, dude, what? You know what I mean? I need to feed my kids. And so, and Floyd, he was becoming a criminal just to survive. He was stealing. And so when you're down in, those base issues, it really isn't possible to think of sort of my responsibility or accountability in life. But I do feel Clayton did have the opportunity to step in and step out at will, as he did. He decided when he was going to, help Delotha, or help Ida, or help Armstrong even, or not to. And he was really able to do that because of the position he held. He wasn't at risk.
I don't know that he was not at risk. I still think it's a little bit subjective. I think if you were to ask him, he would feel that he was at risk. Because it's hard to come from a perspective that you do not know. And from the outside looking in, you can say, oh, well, you're fine. You can do this. You don't have to worry about living. But in his mind, he may be worrying about living. I mean, if we think about our own children and the lifestyle we've provided for them, they're fine. But we know that they're fine. And we know that, they're going to be taken care of, and they know that. But if you put them in a poorer household, in a household where they had to eat ramen noodles every day, they would feel as if their lifestyle, they would not be able to really grasp that they're okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think sometimes we can look at people and not truly, if we're not in that life, it's really hard to understand how they feel about being outside of that life. And I think that's the issue with racism, period. I think, in all diversity and inclusion issues, it's hard to understand and really, put yourself in someone else's shoes and their lifestyle, because we can't come from that perspective.
Yeah, maybe I misunderstand the way you're coming at the question, because I'm only taking it from what he thought was at risk, which is his father's disapproval could change his life, right? And he did not want to give that part up. And so I totally agree that we are a prisoner of our own perspective. So certainly he can't work outside of that. But I'm really referring to what he thought was at risk. And so when he stepped out, when his father's disapproval could cut him off. And, let me say what I need to say, let me go to this thing because my dad has asked me to. So he did what he needed to do to maintain his lifestyle. But I felt like he just had more choices than Floyd did because of Floyd's class. But we have 3 more minutes. So I just want to keep you track on time and where you want to go in these last 3 minutes.
Okay, so the last 3 minutes, I'm going to go to the next slide. Before I go to the next slide, there's one other facet of this that I want you guys to just think about, and that's their perspective towards women. We didn't even get to touch on that, but the similarities between Floyd and Clayton and what they learned from their fathers as far as women were concerned and how they treated women. So just think on that, and we can maybe talk about that next time. So the issues that we covered today: inequality, race, gender, class, and justice. I want to define these at the end of our final session. I want us to be able to say, this is what we saw in the book, and this is how it correlates to what we're dealing with today. And to be able to come up with some strategies on how we approach these in our day-to-day lives. And with that, I am complete. I turn it over to you, Kennedy.
I had Alexa talking to me out loud, and I wasn't talking to her. Not quite sure what's going on, but thank you all for joining us for today's book club. So this was the first 25 chapters. So we can finish the book by August 30th. We'll kind of just go back over kind of the whole book, what your themes are. I'd love to invite you to be on screen with us. And so just read the book and let us know how you're enjoying it. post in the chat here what you got out of this conversation, and hopefully it will inspire you to read this book and more. And so again, thank you so much, Trista and Kate. Thank you so much for joining me on this. I did a book club with my daughter's school, and these two ladies were a part of that for this book. And I just really did not want to have a conversation without some members from that group. And so I appreciate you all taking the time out today. It really made a difference in this broadcast. And hopefully you can join us on August 30th. And again, we will see you soon. Again, Cheryl, you're the best. Thank you so much. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
So
you.
nice meeting you.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye.